It was a typical Friday night at the Wendy's, where Amy, a fresh-faced college student, was working the graveyard shift. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her, like a swarm of angry bees, flickering sporadically, casting eerie shadows in the corners of the dimly lit restaurant. A few regular customers trickled through the drive, their voices crackling to the intercom, while the kitchen hummed with the sounds of frying, sizzling, and the occasional beep of the fryer. But something felt off that night. She stole a glance at Doug, her co-worker, who had always been a little too friendly, his smile stretching a bit too wide. Whenever he caught her eye, he was leaning against the counter, staring at her with an intensity that made her spine tingle. "You're really cute, you know that," he said, his voice too soft for comfort. Amy forced a smile, her stomach churning. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see a message from her best friend Lisa, asking how the shift was going. Before she could respond, an unsettling voice broke through the static of the drive-thru. "Hey there, pretty girl. Would you like to take my order?" She turned her attention back to the speaker, forcing cheer into her tone. "Welcome to Wendy's. How can I help you tonight?" The man on the other end reveled in a creepy chuckle, his breathing heavy and labored. Amy's stomach twisted into knots. After taking the order, the man continued to chat, making overtly flirtatious remarks that made her skin crawl. Knackers. She felt the weight of Doug's gaze on her, saw him smirking as if savoring her discomfort. As the night went on, her unease grew. Doug ambled over as Amy cleaned the fryer, invading her personal space. "What do you think of people who flirt?" he asked. His breasts fell as he leaned against the counter. "I think they can be annoying." Amy shot back, her voice tight. He just laughed, stepping closer, the tension thickening the air around them. "You should be flattered." Feeling trapped, Amy cleared her throat, avoided his gaze, and channeled her energy into her work. Moments later, she retreated to the cooler for a break, a heart pounding in her ears. She desperately needed to escape, to breathe. But instead, she found herself cornered by Doug when he followed her in, the door swinging shut behind her. "You shouldn't shut me out, Amy. I could make things really fun for you," he said, a predatory glint in his eyes. Panic surged in her chest as she squeezed past him, escaping into the back storage room. She decided to tell her manager, Kevin, who was fixated on his phone. "Can you please do something about Doug? She's being really creepy," she begged. Kevin barely glanced up, shaking his head. "He's harmless. Don't worry about it. Just do your job." Deflated, Amy returned to the counter. She glanced at the clock, the minutes dragging like hours. As she took out the trash later that night, a chill ran down her spine. The parking lot was dark, only lit by the flickering lights from the restaurant. Just then, Amy noticed something written on the back of a drive-through receipt, a list of her routines, her favorite places, the times her shifts ended, and the realization sent shivers down her spine. Someone had been watching her closely. She turned abruptly, her heart racing, but found only silence. The world outside felt menacing, as if it was watching her back. As she hurried back inside, Amy felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her. The shift continued, the dread slowly festering within her. Looking out into the darkened night, she saw her earlier flirtatious customer returning, heart pounding. She took their order, desperately wanting to feel some semblance of safety in their laughter. For a fleeting moment, she felt supported in their presence, but that security crumbled as she noticed Doug stalking closer, a sinister expression painted across his face. When the drive-through order was done, Amy retreated to the restroom, hands clasped together, her mind racing. She decided she had enough. No more games, no more feeling like a victim. Steeling herself, she took a deep breath, ready to confront Doug. She'd had enough hiding, but as she stepped outside, Doug loomed over her, anger twisting his features. "You think I'm going to let you get away?" he snarled. Fear gripped her as he lunged at her, and she narrowly dodged him, sprinting into the parking lot. "Help!" she screamed, her terrified voice echoing in the night. But the parking lot felt deserted, the silence suffocating. Her heart raced as she desperately looked for someone to help. Suddenly, the car headlights from a group of friendly customers from earlier illuminated the scene. They quickly rushed to her aid, and she felt a flicker of hope ignite in her chest. The customers jumped out, shouting at Doug, who recoiled as if caught off guard. "What are you doing?" one of them shouted, stepping protectively in front of Amy. Doug, realizing he was outnumbered, hissed, then spun on his heel, running into the darkness. The customers called the police and kept Amy company, listening to her recount the night's harrowing events. Their support helped her regain her strength, turning what felt like a nightmare into a moment of empowerment. The police arrived shortly after, just as Doug had returned, now brandishing a knife, a fierce resolve in his eyes. A standoff ensued, the air thick with tension as the police ordered Doug to drop the weapon. With the customers standing by her side, Amy watched as the officers made the arrest, saving her from further danger. I'd said. Relief washed over her, bringing her to her knees with tears streaming down her cheeks. The customers offered comfort with reassuring words, and she felt gratitude surge within her. No longer the silent victim, as she made a decision. She would press charges against Doug. As the night wore on, she spoke with the police about the events, her voice steady, fueled by new strength. After Doug was taken away, she found herself smiling faintly at the customers, now friends. They promised to stay in touch, a bond born from shared terror. As she drove home through the darkened streets, the echoes of the night's horror lingered in her mind, and neon signs blurred past her as the restaurant faded in the rearview mirror. But she felt different, towered. What had started as a nightmare transformed into a story of courage. She was ready to face her fears head on. As she pulled into her driveway, Amy reflected on the importance of speaking up, standing up for herself, and for others facing harassment. The shadows might still lurk, but she wouldn't back down. With a final glance back at the haunted moonlit street, she vowed to become a voice for those too afraid to speak, transforming her fear into strength. In the end, the darkness that night might have brought terror, but it also ignited a fire within her shell. The story of that night would echo in her mind, a haunting tale, yes, but also a story of triumph over fear and darkness. As the night closed in around her, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't just a victim anymore.